We met Tulku Urgyen quite later on in his life because as we grew up, there comes a period in your life where you have now received a certain amount of teachings, not all, but some amount of teachings, and your teachers then ask you to then go to other teachers and receive teachings, especially for the continuity of the transmissions of the lineages. And so His Holiness Karmapa having passed away, some of the difficulties being there with all the different things that kept up. So His Holiness Mindrolling really had great respect for Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche. And so we requested, and Rinpoche was very kind enough to give us a lot of the teachings, especially within the Kagyu lineage and the transmissions. Rinpoche had in his earlier years studied with Khyentse Rinpoche, the previous, and Chung Rinpoche. So he had a very strong connection with the Mindrolling Khyentse Rinpoche and Chung Rinpoche. So he was very happy to have them, and that gave us 3 younger people to go to Rinpoche and receive teachings. And so we always found in Rinpoche the kindest of the teachers, kind and gentle and not frightening. Again, is a word that comes. Just so much gentleness, and you could do anything you wanted, and he wouldn't say a thing. That kind of kindness.
It seems he plays a premium on that.
Oh, he was that kind of person. He had students just about not climbing on his bed was about the only thing. Otherwise, just everywhere. Behind chairs would be people doing treasure. Outside the door would be people doing the corpse posture. Down from the window would be someone doing jut. 2 or 3 people in the tent trying to do a retreat on Vajra Yogini. Things like that. He was just surrounded by people who were doing practices everywhere. And that's a remarkable Dzogchen master that he was, is that he was just there for anyone. Anyone could come into the door. We felt, that was our impressions. Anyone could come into the door and he would pointing out instructions. And so pointing out instructions, he would say, that is the nature of mind. And then he would just rest there with his finger doing this and rest there. And then there would be this whole group of people. It was your choice. You wanted to leave, stay on, meditate, try to understand what he was doing, mingle mind with mind, or just stare or fidget around a little bit, and no saying when he came out of that. And then he would just continue. And so people would go around doing the same thing. It's just, I found it extraordinary the first time because when we had requested, it was the second time that we went, and he was in Nagigompa at that moment, and Ken Rinpoche, Jetsun and I, and some of the nuns went, and nuns and monks went. And of all the things, there was an initiation, a public initiation happening for which many people were there. Someone was giving transmissions in another house. One of his sons were doing an initiation somewhere else. Nuns were learning in some kind of jut practice. There was this whole group of Westerners who seemed to be doing everywhere. And you walked up the staircase and you had to literally walk over bodies because they were all in their corpse posture. And at one time, I remember I came out of the door of the shrine room and there was one of the Dzogchen Khenpos lying there like this. And I thought he had a epileptic kind of a seizure at that time. I got very worried and I asked one of his attendants, is there something wrong with this man? And he said, no, he's been asked by Rinpoche to do the corpse posture. So I was, oh, okay. Because we were taught to the kind of, you do it in an isolated place and you did that. So Mindrolling is always very disciplined with you do it in the right place at the right time and so on and so forth. So it was just this, I thought His Holiness Mindrolling Trichen was rather kind of freestyle. But this was and then we have this whole in the major monasteries you have a lot of hierarchy, and so you do that. You have this place. You have designated places. It's for simple things. If you want to go down to the monastery, you call up Master of Keys, the chamber person. And so there's this whole process that you go through. And of course, the 3 of us at that time, nowadays traveling to the West and so forth, you get a lot more relaxed in those things. But at that time, we're just freshly out of a very disciplined setup of hierarchy. So we went there, and Rinpoche gave us teachings, and no designated place to sleep in. So we were wondering, where do we sleep? Now, hearing that it was very crowded all the time, the nuns had taken a tent. We had pitched up a tent on the outside, and then there are no designated places to pitch up a tent. You can just sort of pitch it up anywhere you like. So they had pitched up a tent, and so we waited and we waited. It's 9:30 at night, 10 o'clock at night. People are just going everywhere. They're just everywhere. And so the three of us were left. Where do we sleep? Do we get a room? Don't we get a room? Are we supposed to sleep in the tent? What are we supposed to do? So there's this head nun who housekeeps for Rinpoche, and she has this bunch of keys with her. And so we asked her, Animaya, where do we sleep? You can sleep here if you want. So that's just below Rinpoche's bed, then we slept. So that was that no separation of meditation, post-meditation, practice, non-practice, teaching, non-teaching. It was just that you had to lose all that. He was that kind of a teacher who just integrated everything into that moment. In the short period of time that we spent with him, it was just a very amazing person, immense kindness. He had suffered a very massive heart attack during one of the times that we were there. And he could hardly breathe properly. And yet there were almost 200 people taking teachings from him at that time.
Wow.
Morning he would have a heart attack. Afternoon he would be teaching. Doctors would get mad at him. All teachers are great, and it's just not possible to make comparisons. This is something that you like better than the other. But in just coming up with an answer here, I would say the accessibility of a teacher. It just was amazing. Sometimes teachers are not so accessible. And they're accessible to some, but not to all. But just his accessibility, down to earth. And just being who he is. Didn't need to do anything special to be who he was. Just was a remarkable, simple person. Simple in a very direct and realized way. It's easy to become pretentious as a Tulku with a kind of teaching, and it's always refreshing for anyone to meet with. It's kind of someone who's so fresh in his presence. It's that when you're surrounded by hats and brocades and throne your entire life, to see that someone who doesn't do that. I was very, very taken by that.